All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dispersing the Fog. This is episode 20 of our podcast. My name's Adam Rogers here with Paul Palango, best-selling author of Anatomy of a Cover-Up, among many other things, as you can see over his right shoulder there. How you doing, Paul?
20. We've done 20 of these already.
Yeah,
Uh,
seems
I'm
like we're
doing
just getting
fine.
started.
I mean, you're a busy guy. You're a lawyer. I just sort of hang around the house. But
Well, yeah, it's been a busy week. You think July things are going to slow down? It's not quite the case. It was a busy week. I was in court just about every day last week, including actually I was in Halifax for a couple of days doing a bail hearing in Supreme Court, which is great, except for one thing, which is it was really, really hot in Halifax this week, as it was everywhere, probably in the country. And when you're in Supreme Court, you wear a waistcoat. You know, you have the shirt with the tabs, and then you have to wear a waistcoat. So even just the 2 blocks from the hotel to the courthouse, I was sweating bullets, and not
how
getting
did
my
it
case.
go in Supreme Court?
Well, it didn't work out. No, I was representing a youth, so I can't say too much about it. But I thought it was a strong bail plan, but it didn't work out, unfortunately. This time around, can't win them all.
No, you can't win them all. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. How about yourself? Your
I've had a
Fourth of
like
July?
just things going in as usual, every which direction. I had a battle with a senior editor at a national newspaper early in the week who was upset about something I'd reported about their paper in Anatomy of a Cover-Up. And they were cutting me off. And I said, well, what are you cutting me? You don't do anything for me anyway. So what am I being cut off from? And then there was a funny sort of exchange where um, the editor was saying I was misleading my readers by doing what I did, and I said, "No, I'm not. It's news. I think it was news. I still think it's news." He said, "Well, we wouldn't have approved of it." I said, "Fine. That's why I did it because I knew you wouldn't approve of it anyway. So I did it because
Yeah,
it's news and it's important the readers know that." And he said, "Well, you're misleading your readers." And I'm saying, "Excuse me. In the mass casualty in 2020, I was trying to write stories about Lisa Banfield 6, 7 months after the fact,
yeah,
and no newspaper in Canada was reporting anything about her, not even her name. And I said, I have questions about her story and I want to raise that. And then I subsequently have written 2 books, 1,100 pages, of which about 6 or 7 chapters are devoted to the Lisa Banfield story. And I pointed out to the editor, so your readers essentially have been misled about this story. So
yeah.
what are you going to do to correct the story, correct the record? I haven't heard back.
No, you think they jump all over that? It's so amazing, right? That there wouldn't be more balanced reporting on these things or people looking to take a new angle. For all the faults of the British or the American news media, there's always somebody ambitiously looking to find a new angle on a story and try to, bring readers to it. Instead, here it's like, well, here's the one angle that's acceptable, and that's all we're going to
Well,
cover.
well, I had another newspaper person tell me that we don't do matchers. You know what a matcher is?
No.
In the newspaper world, in the old days, like, 80s, early, 70s, 80s, early 90s, a matcher is this. A newspaper breaks a great story or an interesting story with an interesting angle. Or maybe a TV station on one of those rare days breaks a story. They stumbled into it, the car crashed, and they found a story. But a matcher was the other guys would write a story, and we used to have this all the time at the Globe and Mail, and the Toronto Star or the Sun would go out immediately and do their version of that story.
Yeah,
Sometimes they would try to shoot the story down, sometimes they would try to amplify the story. But the point was that all the media got involved in big stories.
sure.
Nowadays, it's like this attitude like they're all narcissists. We don't match other papers or other medium stories. They just run alone. So you have all these silos of news, and the wider public's not seeing all the story because you've got this, as I said, narcissistic sort of closure where they just don't want to do what anyone else has done. They see it as an insult, and they've lost sense of what their job is. That's what's happening.
It's a peculiar approach. You think, if something's in marketing, no matter what the kind of product is, if something's becoming popular, there's always, somebody going to do their version of it, whether it's sneakers or soft drinks or whatever, right? Energy drinks. It's just, all right, we're going to do our version of it and make ours popular and overtake the original. Uh,
And the media is a public trust, but we've lost that because everything we have now is supposedly run like a business, into the ground.
yeah.
That's what's happened.
Well, not us, Paul. We're not running this like a business. We're here as a public service, and part of our public service is bringing on interesting guests. We've had a great series of guests over the last few weeks, and we're bringing one back right away, which is Tom Juby. He's going to be joining us shortly on the show. People really enjoyed his analysis, and he had a lot more to say. We could tell that, and so we brought him back to pinch hit again. So. We'll bring him in a little bit here. Looking forward to that.
Other things going on, when in light of the Portapic story, something I noticed the other day, just for people who really have followed that story, one of the characters in that story from the beginning was Constable Nick Dorrington,
Yeah,
who was seen to be this mysterious guy who gave Gabriel Wortman, the shooter, a ticket about a month and a half before the 2 months before the rampage. Um, Dorrington later on during the rampage was a bit of a heroic character
yeah.
because he was trying to go hunt Wortman down and he wasn't allowed to. Then his wife basically passed on information from her friend who saw Wortman pass by in Brookfield. So he was there frantically trying to alert his compatriots what was going on. And then I saw this story from New Brunswick the other day. A guy was charged with, holding someone hostage and then getting into a shootout, basically threatening to kill a bunch of Mounties. 15 Mounties. He was charged with 15 charges of attempted murder.
Ooh.
And one of the 15 Mounties is Nick Dorrington.
Oh, in New
So,
Brunswick.
so he appears to be in New Brunswick around the Fredericton area. And that's interesting because Dorrington did not appear at the Mass Casualty Commission.
No.
But in his interviews, he was very critical of his superiors and saying some of the people who were his so-called bosses were not tactical, shouldn't be on the road, shouldn't be giving orders. So he was very critical. And what happens when you're critical of the RCMP? You get shoved out the door. Poof,
Off
you're gone.
off to New Brunswick. Geez, of all places. It's not Siberia, but it's maybe not the top placement. Yeah, he was an armed forces veteran
Yeah, he
and
joined the force.
really
He's
very
almost
capable.
Yeah, he joined the forces when he was almost 50 after 33 years in the armed forces as a soldier and then as a civilian. Um, it seems to be a very capable guy. The other interesting thing about this thing, and I hate to belabor the point, but it is an important point about the disequity in the forces between men and women. We've talked about this before, female officers who are not in the thick of things. And in this case, 15 RCMP members were involved in this near shootout. All of them were men.
Oh,
That's exactly the story I've been trying to tell. That if you're going to have equity in the force, whether it's real or not, why are the men the only ones out doing the dangerous jobs? Maybe they're the ones that can do it, but then that's not equity.
no, it's not. It's it's a point I know I've heard Jordan Peterson make as a sort of broader thing, right? Where it's like, hey, who's out working the oil rigs? Who's doing these, super dangerous jobs? And
I've never
it's
heard
not
that.
balanced.
I don't follow Jordan Peterson, but I don't, I've heard this and that about him. But I mean, the argument, I look at the names of the 15 officers involved in this dangerous situation. Nicholas Hatt, Andrew Charles Williams, Samuel Panouf, Nicholas Vu, Maximilian Monfet Thierret, Stefan Blinn, Nicholas Dorrington, Tyler Piercy, Jamie Hawkins, Corporal Jonathan Cook, Staff Sergeant Luc Samson, Sergeant Mike L'Italien.
Yeah.
Uh, there's something wrong here, and we've got to do something about it because there's a misconception about what policing is. And if you wonder why morale is bad, well, people are getting paid the same amount as these guys, and they're not doing the dirty work.
Yeah. No, that doesn't go well in an organization of any kind. It's No, I hadn't heard about that out of New Brunswick, so that's something to follow up on. So what's
We,
happened with the guy?
he's in jail. I don't think he got bail.
No,
And
he probably didn't apply for bail in those circumstances. Uh,
yeah, it's just I'm keeping an eye on it. It's sort of I'm here with all my antenna up, and things keep floating through the windows and the doors and stories, and
they
I
they do,
collect.
Paul, and the patterns that that's a pattern that emerged out of the mass shootings in Nova Scotia. Another one. So I've been following this Jack and Lily Sullivan story a little bit too out of Pictou, the missing kids. And the story this week in the Herald, the Chronicle Herald, is that there's 5,000 video files that have been provided to the police, and they're analyzing these. And they have the one of the people speaking, and this was interesting, Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon, Major Crime and Behavioral Sciences. So that title alone seems to say something. But
It
but
sounds like excuse me, it sounds like a typical Mountie. He actually has two titles, and the taxpayers are paying for both jobs, but it's only one guy doing it.
yeah. Oh, there's oh man, I'd like to talk about some Mr. Big stuff at some point. Maybe I will at some stage, but not yet involved with this youth. But there's some very strange things going on with the police. But this Jack and Lily Sullivan. Okay, so there's 5,000 video files that have been provided. So that's a one change that's taken place that I've seen over 20 years. Before there was never any video of anything. Now there's body cam footage of many situations,
Mhm.
and there's all these trail cams that people have that are triggered by motion sensors. There's people have, door cams that are showing. So whenever there's a situation with the missing kids, they're asking for all these video. We don't know because the police are not saying anything publicly about whether there's anything to this, whether they really expect to find anything on the video. It's a difficult thing for the public because on the one hand, if there's 5,000 videos, that seems like there might be some hope of finding these kids. That seems like there might maybe be some suspects of potential abduction, but the police aren't saying anything. But so going back to the Nick Dorrington point, nobody was talking to one another during the mass shooting and the public wasn't alerted. And there was a member of the public that happened to talk to Nick Dorrington's wife that happened then passed it on to him, critical information, which Nick Dorrington then gave to other Mounties, and they started to catch up to Gabriel Wortman. Very so they're repeating this pattern of not communicating with the public, not seeking help from citizens who could be helpful.
You know what the most disturbing thing is about what you just said?
What's that?
5,000 cameras, all these trail cams, everything like that.
Yeah.
How can you commit a crime these days?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the only people who are committing crimes are the ones who want to get caught. Because if you don't want to get caught, I mean, how can any novelist write a legitimate crime novel now with some sort of clever, the probably the only clever sort of protagonist you could have in a story is the invisible man now
Oh
because
yeah.
everything else is on camera. Like, how do you write a credible story? Because you just can't sneak around anymore.
It's hard. Like I remember the first the first Matt Damon Jason Bourne movie, and it's he's going around these European cities, and there's these street cameras every once in a while that would capture. And we thought, wow, that's amazing. Well, that's everywhere now. That's in small towns, that's in rural areas, that's in cities, that's everywhere. So it's yeah, it really changed the dynamics on things. So
Um,
yeah,
and there are two other stories I wanted to just make note of.
yeah,
Maybe we'll get into them later. One was Dean Beebe, the access to information specialist in Ottawa, who's from Nova Scotia, wrote a story the other day on his um, what do you call it? His blog site,
Substack.
yeah, Substack.
Yeah,
That about RCMP note taking, about a report he got access to information showing that the poor note taking by the RCMP members across the board, there was an audit. And they'd been reprimanded many, many times in the past for this, and nothing gets fixed. This, and we saw this during the mass casualty. RCMP notes were atrocious. They were missing. They were severely edited, obviously,
yeah.
uh, or they're, as I said, just invisible. This is outrageous that they still do this, but nobody tells the RCMP what to do.
No, and there's no real tracking way, tracking mechanism through the courts or anywhere else to say, okay, well, this particular officer or this department or this area, they're not taking good notes, and that, if there was a way to track that and it was a repeated pattern, maybe somebody would do something about it, put pressure on the police to do something. Now, in a rural area where the same officers tend to appear in front of the same judge frequently, then that kind of thing becomes known. And when it's a certain officer that's making the arrest, that's okay, that's so and so, and you got to take it with a grain of salt and you little jaundiced eye. But in a city like Ottawa, where Dean Beebe, I think, was writing, you're going to appear in front of a different judge every case, and that's not going to be picked up.
The other story was by Christy Nees, Nease, Kristy, Christy Nees from CBC. It was back on June 2nd, but it was a really good CBC story. Of course, it's not picked up by anyone else, so you don't know about it unless you're reading CBC online. But I made note of it, and I just want to bring it up about there's no mechanism to deal with officers who lie and fabricate things on the stand. And and again, in the Mass Casualty Commission going through the reports, I'm seeing cases where I don't think they were telling the truth, but there's no mechanism to deal with this. And what do you see in
No,
court?
we don't. You know, probably between 10 and 15 years ago, it was starting to become a thing for defense lawyers to be asking for what they call McNeil disclosure. McNeil is just the name of a case where it came up. And it was a disclosure involving any officers who were involved in the case, if they've had any disciplinary proceedings or, any disciplinary anything, right? Anything that's on the record that would relate to bad notes, lying in court, anything, that's dishonest. It seems like there's been a reaction because we're not getting that anymore, and we're not even really hearing about it much as lawyers. It seems like the police have adjusted to that regime and have been disciplining their own officers fewer and fewer times, less and less often for anything like that. So there's an action and a reaction, and yeah, we just don't see it. It's just individual cases. You don't see any real patterns on the individual officers anymore.
Mhm.
So
Well,
it's
let's bring Tom in then, and we can have more fun.
yeah, let's bring Tom in. So Tom is gracious enough to join us, and I see we're doing a Zoom call. He's in the room, so we're going to bring him in. Here's Tom Juby, everyone. He's coming.
Hey,
Hey, there he is.
Good evening, Tom.
hi, how are you guys?
Hey, doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
I want to tell you the last time you were on last week, right after the podcast went out, Kurt Allen contacted me, former deputy commissioner of the RCMP, twice interviewed for commissioner. And he says, "Where is that Tom Juby from?" And I told him, "Well, I think he grew up in southern Quebec." And he goes, "I worked with his brother a couple of times, cross paths with his brother. You had a couple of brothers in the RCMP."
Yeah, I had an older brother and a younger one. Um, he probably crossed paths with Russ, my older brother. Um, he ended up being an inspector up in Whitehorse in admin and personnel up there. But he spent 20 odd years on the musical ride, training not only riders, but horses, breaking and training them. So he got around the country a lot and some trips overseas.
I see isn't the RCMP now doing the guard for King Charles III now? Isn't I thought that was in the news this
No,
week.
that's not the RCMP.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
No, that's the Army.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well,
There's they're called horse guard, but they normally drive tanks. Yeah, no, it's not RCMP.
okay. I didn't know how many horse troops there were out there.
Well, I suppose they've had to take riding lessons.
Yeah, no doubt.
Last week, Tom, we got into part of the Corey Ellison shooting and what happened at Portapic on the night of April 18th, 2020. And I think we effectively have shown both in the book, and we discussed it last week, about how the RCMP narrative and the official MCC narrative for what happened at that time was, to be kind, faulty. It seems like a fabrication because what they said happened didn't happen, which led us to look at Corey Ellison's shooting because there's questions about that. One of the thing, one of the things we concentrated on were, the autopsy report, the angle of the shooting, the timing of the shooting, the map, the fact that Wortman didn't appear to be in that area. It's very suspicious. It looks like they were covering up something, possibly a Mountie accidentally shooting um, Corey Ellison. One of the things we didn't bring up at the time was the Mounties in their first description of what happened that night said Wortman left around 10:35. Corey Ellison was later found to be shot at 10:40, 10:40:12 around that time. And then they said Wortman left at 10:45 through the blueberry field. Well, that didn't happen. We know that. So it looks like they were making up that story. And the other thing we didn't get into is the evidence that was offered before the MCC through the lab analysis showing that there was a DNA spot from Corey Ellison on Wortman's boot. So the question I have for both you, Adam, as a lawyer, and Tom as a forensic specialist, do you believe that? And I'd like to see a little debate about this. Like, do you believe Wortman left DNA there or was it placed there? That's basically the question.
Was Corey's DNA on Wortman's boot?
Yeah, they
Is
said
that right?
a drop of DNA on Wortman's boot, along with the drops from some other victims as well. Maybe you could lead us through how that would be examined and how that would be done normally in your day.
Well, in my day, the boots would have gone forward to the crime lab along with samples of blood from the various victims. Of course, the blood would have been taken during the autopsies from each of the victims. That would be standard procedure. And it would all be shipped off to the crime lab to biology for them to do a comparison, and they would extract the blood or anything DNA wise from the actual exhibit boots.
And when would this be done?
When would it be done?
Yeah. Like, would it be expedited or would it be?
In this particular case, I don't think it would have been an expedited case. Um, the Ottawa is the central lab, is the only crime lab for the force. They're all in Ottawa now, and
It's fine.
when I was in, they were spread across the country, and then they built the new headquarters in Dartmouth, and they spent multi millions of dollars. In fact, my ex son-in-law worked on the building as a pipe fitter, and they put in stainless steel drain pipes and just no end to the cost. Before they opened up, Ottawa decided, or headquarters decided, we're going to shift everybody into Ottawa and work out of Ottawa.
What? That's
So now,
crazy.
yeah, so now the guys spend half their time on a plane flying across the country. So I don't see where that was a cost saving.
So what
Yes.
is,
And
so you're
It seems
saying
very
so
wasteful, yeah, to have that all flown to Ottawa. So was the stainless steel significant from a scientific perspective, or was it just nicer?
just it's not corrosive.
Okay,
Some
yeah,
of the stuff they use is corrosive.
all right.
But he
so
said they had a heck of a time putting the stuff in because they're used to working with ABS plastic.
so the
Anyways, they in fact there was a big furor here a few years back as to who was going to use the that part of the building. The feds wanted to put other agencies into the building, and of course the RCMP didn't want to because security reasons and whatnot. I don't know how they resolved that one. Anyways, I don't know how many people they now have in Ottawa biology doing the DNA, but they must have a lot because, as I say, they have to attend court. So when they do a file, it could be in northern BC or the Yukon, Northwest Territories, or anywhere else in between, including Newfoundland. And
what's this is a
they're
digression, but
they're in the air.
it's a digression, but it's an interesting one. Isn't the point of the RCMP as a provincial police force on contract in the provinces outside of Ontario and Quebec is that they would assume to have their own crime labs in those areas? Isn't that the way it was set up in the originally?
That's the way it was originally, but the powers that be thought that it was money saved. I I I know that when I was in, um, there was a big furor going on because they had planned to do it, and the people in the lab in Halifax, they were irate. They said, we're going to spend half our time in the air flying back and forth, and when are we going to get any work done? And then here a few years back, after they built the building, uh, the powers that be decided that that's the way it was going to be. Now, I don't know how that saves money.
What we're seeing now,
Anyways,
Tom,
getting back to
oh,
your,
I was just going to, sorry to interrupt, Tom. I was just going to say we're seeing now more. requests from the Crown Prosecutor's offices to allow video testimony for experts, for DNA experts, so that they don't have to travel. It's usually seen as uncontroversial evidence that there's no credibility at question of the DNA experts. So most of the time, the defense lawyers will agree to the video appearance rather than having the person flown down, but would don't have to agree. The other question I had just on the travel issue is, does that in any way put the DNA samples at risk, at greater risk?
Not really,
Oh,
no.
okay, good. Right.
Blood won't deteriorate if it's dry
All right.
and kept protected. It what we used to do, um, typically at a crime scene, you're dealing with wet blood in clothing or at the scene, and you you take your samples and allow them to air dry. Clothing, you would hang them in a protected area, let it air dry, and then it would carefully be bagged. And once it's dry, it's okay. It's going to go forward in a in a, your packaging, of course, has got to be up to a certain standard, and continuity has to be maintained, which means the chain of evidence, and that usually is not a problem.
The first testing was done on the workman's boots in the lab reports by the MCC. First testing was conducted on November 4th, 2020. So, and that test found DNA from Wortman, victims Tom Bagley, Heidi Stevenson, Joy Bond, and an unknown male. Then the second test was
Yeah, from
done.
April to November.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in November. Then a second test was done on April 4th, 2021. More blood spots were found from Stevenson, Wortman, Weber, unknown male number one, and now an unknown male number two. We won't even go there yet, unknown male number one and two, but they seem to find one little speck of Wortman's blood. We made the case last week that it didn't appear that Wortman was even there in the circumstance, and certainly not in the circumstances they described. Should we give them full credit for this or what? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know what to think about that one little spot and where it could have come from. Um, like I like I said last week, their scenario is that he was leaning through the window and shot while leaning at the car.
Right.
I would expect more blood on his clothing, not one little spot on his boots. If he's sitting there driving, now if um, he got out and shot him, well, I don't know.
You shot
I
from a
don't know.
distance, Tom, like from 10 or 15 feet or something like that, there where there wouldn't be any of the markings from the gun itself, but would blood splatter that far back towards the direction of the
Not
shot?
usually.
Yeah, okay.
Not I haven't seen it. I haven't seen cases where it's spread that far.
Yeah.
Um,
And
no.
you're right. I mean, as you pointed out last week, if their story, this is their official story too. This isn't us sort of making up the story. We're dealing with their official story that Corey Ellison leaned in the window of the car and Workman shot him. So, and you said last week that meant the muzzle of the gun was 2 feet or less away from Corey Ellison when it was fired. Therefore, there would be, um, well, basically going in both directions, I guess. There'd be
Yeah.
gunshot residue going towards Ellison, and blood splatter coming the other way, perhaps. But you would expect
When
more
that
blood.
bullet hits flesh, when that bullet hits flesh, it 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 causes the flesh literally to explode sideways and outwards. So that and we're talking at a 40 caliber. It's not as large a bullet as a 9 mil. It's a slower bullet, but you're still looking at. I think the feet per minute is up around 900 feet per second rather, up around 900 feet per second. So, I mean, that's fast, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's slapping into the skin with such an impact that it just causes it to explode. And it's going to come in all directions.
So you think should be more than one little dot on
Oh,
Wortman's
there
shirt?
should have been. And they examined his shirt and his pants. Um, yeah, there should have
Like
been more.
like even if he walked over to the body after having shot from a distance, you wouldn't think it would be one drop.
It would
If
be more.
you know, you don't want to. So,
He shot him what, 5 times?
5 times.
Or there were 5 shots into him.
yeah, it's
That's a
peculiar. On
that's
the
going to
other,
create.
yeah,
And the more I read the autopsy report, I went over them again since we talked last week. It seems to me that Clinton Ellison, Corey Ellison's brother, says, "I think my brother was walked up to them and stumbled, and that accounts for the shots because the shots are all angles like going up and through his neck, through his ear, things like that, so the side of the head. But the angle is really odd. Um, I don't know what to make of it, but it certainly doesn't sound like Wortman shooting.
well, if somebody was stumbling,
Wortman's
yeah,
tall. How tall was Corey?
I don't know.
not sure.
Wortman was 6'3", 6'2", 6'3".
Okay, so
Um,
he's not going to be shooting up at Corey. He's going to be shooting
level
pretty much
down.
level, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh.
So the angles,
I remember his father, Richard Ellison, testifying.
if he shot outside,
Yeah, when Richard Ellison was standing next or sitting, I guess, next to the two to Daryl Curry, and he didn't seem any taller than those guys. I don't know. Anyway, that's
So average height, like
yeah,
5'9",
yeah.
10, something like that.
On the other hand, if you wanted to put a drop of blood on somebody's shoe, it wouldn't be hard to do.
Well, you normally wouldn't say that about.
it's not difficult to
Would you
do.
say that again?
It's not difficult to do.
Well, you don't want to really say that about the police doing that, but here they've given us all kinds of room because of the things they've fabricated in other areas. The shooting of Heidi Stevenson, the gunfight between Heidi Stevenson and Wortman, their description of what happened at the Enfield Big Stop, their description of Oslo Belmont Fire Hall. They were making things up. So what I couldn't put it past them making that up. And they had the time to do it from April 19th to what, November 4th, 2020. It's a long time. A lot of people could have been in there analyzing what was going on because I also know, we know they were destroying and manipulating evidence. I wrote that back in 2020 and then I got the document showing it, that they actually were doing it. So I was describing from my sources saying that the PROS system was being manipulated, evidence was being massaged, they were making evidence disappear. That's all on the record.
What is it? The saying, um, it it must not only be done properly, it must be seen to be done properly.
Yeah.
Good point.
Um, there's when you start playing with evidence, then it casts doubt on everything. It taints everything. So yeah, you can't help but look at it and think that it's tainted.
Paul, you mentioned the
It, it throw it throws into doubt everything.
I was just going to ask Paul about the unknown male sample, and we can ask Tom about that. I mean, when I look at DNA samples, and when I see them in cases, it's often sexual assault cases, sometimes homicides. But in the sexual assault cases, if it's an unknown male, what that means is that it's a male DNA that's not in the national database. Um, in this case, how would there be an unknown male sample? Among, wouldn't they have tested all the victims and have the DNA from everybody involved?
Well, it's two unknown males.
Two unknown males.
Yeah.
Now, did he change his clothing from that morning? Or that morning, he changed his clothing, did he not?
Yeah.
So when he was eventually shot, that would have been civilian clothing, not uniform.
I think that's right.
That's true. Where did he change, Paul?
Now,
Changed at Gina Grace.
now the
Yeah.
report that I read says that it was jeans that the blood was on, the unknown blood.
That's right. So I'm not
That's
sure
what he
where
was.
those fit in.
What's that?
I'm, I'm not sure where that fits in. Like, like in his clothing changes, I've lost track of all his clothing changes.
Okay, well, what I read there today was it was his jeans that they found some of the unknown blood on. That's what he would have been wearing when he was taken down. Now, was it blood or was it just DNA that they found?
It just says DNA in the shoes. The same test found DNA from an unknown male on his shoes, along with DNA from Tom Bagley, Heidi Stevenson, Joy Bond, and Corey Ellison. And the second test found DNA from Stevenson, Wortman, Joey Weber, male one, and unknown male two. So they were, whatever he was wearing was tested both times, and the unknown male comes up, the second unknown male comes up April 4th, 2021 in that test.
See,
It's,
what I'm getting at is he was hauled out of the car onto the ground by the members. Would
yep,
that DNA have come from them?
who knows?
Or
Yeah.
did he get into a fight that morning or the day before and it come from that if it was
Well,
blood?
here's where we go into, at the risk of going all conspiracy theory here. One of the things that I was told early on by witnesses, and I sort of lost track of the story because I was focused on other things. Uh, some people told me that there had been a dispute earlier in the evening and the sound of gunshots prior to around 8 o'clock that night, before the 8 or 9 o'clock, before the fire and the shootings began at 10 o'clock. And there was a suggestion that Wortman had shot someone, but it's not something I could prove or really get into because his buildings both burnt down. There doesn't seem to have been much of a fire marshal, fire investigation, and there was never any mention of any remains found in the cinders of those two properties. It raises the question: was Wortman, you know, legitimately, it's blue sky here. Was Wortman attacked by two people and he was lying in wait for, and he killed them, and that's one of the reasons he went on the rampage and burned their bodies in the building and stuff like that? I don't know, but how do you explain the two other males?
Well, the other one
Well,
maybe.
that scenario that scenario crossed my mind too.
Hmm.
And did he get into a fight with somebody earlier or two people earlier?
Well,
Yeah.
the word is, and I'm told more and more since, in the last 5 weeks, this Anatomy of a Cover-Up came out, that I got a message the other day relayed to me from a top-ranking former Mountie who you would know. I'm not telling you who it was. He was in a conversation with someone. They got a hold of me and said they brought my name up and stuff and about what we're doing in Nova Scotia. And this top-ranking Mountie said, "Tell Paul he's 100% right that it was a blown undercover operation and that Wortman was an agent." So there's something going on. Wortman felt as I point on the book, Wortman felt his life was over and he was going to be killed. Is that what happened? Is that what the two unknown males are? I don't know. Conspiracy theory? No, do I have to go get my tinfoil out and make it happen?
I
What? But
think you're good there, Paul. But what the only other male that would have been, I thought, was maybe Sean McLeod, but we don't know what clothing changed, and that's only one. It's only would only account for one even still.
so you thought about it too, Tom. You thought he might have killed two other people that they don't want to talk about.
Well, it's that's the where else would, if it's blood, where would blood come from? It would have to be from two others that was letting blood close proximity to him. So,
And you would think that,
that brings to mind with his mentality, the way, from what I understand, um, yeah, something set him off to do what he did, and to have been into a fracas with two characters and either do them in or what have you. There's a possibility there for anything.
well, see, that sort of makes sense to me or it's a good theory to work on that he actually killed two people maybe at his cottage, which is the reason why he burned the cottage down to start with.
Well, Paul, think
Because
of
it's a
this
wooden
now.
cottage and it burned hot.
The story that we heard was that there was this video call to friends in Maine and all this stuff. We don't have any evidence of that call having taken place. We don't have any confirmation electronically of a video call from Wortman and Banfield to the States. We never heard from these friends in Maine that were
Well,
involved in the guns.
they were interviewed.
Sure, but we don't have any proof that that call took place.
Yep.
So that's out there.
There's a lot out there. Have you ever seen anything like that? Have you ever seen a case where you suspected evidence had been planted?
I've uh, I've had experience where my evidence was denied by senior members of the force. I had a case in northern New Brunswick where an individual was charged with impaired driving, dangerous driving, hit and run, and a whole raft of things. And I did a survey measurement of the scene and showed that dangerous driving and some of the charges wouldn't stand up in court. There was too many other influences, and the sergeant in charge told me that if you can't give evidence for the prosecution, you won't give evidence at all. And I complained to my OC, and the about 3 days later, the defense counsel called me and said, "Thank you very much. My guy is pleading guilty to impaired driving, and the other charges are dropped. And are you available for the civil suit?" Well, the two constables ended up being fired. The sergeant was promoted, transferred into internal affairs
Wow.
of all
Of all
places.
things.
So, yeah. And then a year or two later, he got back at me on another matter. Anyways, and then, of course, we have what occurred on Swiss Air. And that's a whole huge kettle of fish. That one is.
Yeah, you were saying Swiss Air. We're going to get into that probably in a special episode coming up. Because that's
Yeah.
what you did, reviewing what you
I've
did
had,
there. And you've written a book on
I've
Swiss.
had, I've had incident. What's that?
You wrote a book on Swiss Air, your own book.
Yeah. I've had incidents where members have suggested to me that I should find evidence uh, to assist the prosecution of an individual, and I just look at them and shake my head and say, "Get lost. I don't want to see you around the scene," and go on and do my job. But guys get wound up, and they they know the individual, and there's a lot of bad people out there, and they're doing things, and guys sometimes think that they can stretch the rules and get a conviction. It, it's a foolish attitude. Um, these guys eventually they will get caught. They only have to make a mistake once, and or only get caught once, and then bingo, we got him. But it's one of those things that in the heat of the moment, guys can do most anything. And as far as planting evidence, um, as I said, very, very senior officers in the case that we're going to discuss later on, um, they ignored vital evidence in a major murder. So, and it makes Portapic look like just a minor.
So what you're saying is it's absolutely possible.
Yeah, that's the short for my long version.
What about you, Adam?
Well, that mean that long version means a lot coming from you, Tom. I mean, it's given the decades of experience you have in the field and everything that you've seen over the years. I mean, you're not just some crank
Well,
behind a
don't get me
keyboard.
wrong. There's some fantastic investigators. I've worked with some fantastic investigators and
Oh yeah,
some
I'm sure. Yeah.
extremely honest guys. But I've worked with some lazy guys who would take shortcuts, and I've worked with some senior, very senior members, even commissioned officers who I do not trust.
Like the old lawyer joke, Tom, it's the 99% that give us 1% a bad rap.
That's right.
That's right.
Well, let's leave it for here, and unless there's something else you want to add at this moment, is there anything else you'd like to talk
No,
about right now?
not for me.
Good. I think we're near the end anyway, so we can sort of move on and thank you. And we're going to have you back to talk about the other story.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom.
Okay, well,
That's great. Thank you very much.
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
So there we are. What do
That
you
was
think?
something. So that's interesting, Paul. Like, so the two unknown male DNA, and Tom didn't. He thought that was unusual and significant.
Well, it does. As I said, there's so many angles to this story. And, at the beginning, I was called, this, that, and another thing for poking around at him. But almost all of it has come true. And one of the things I was told early on by a source was Wortman had shot somebody earlier in the evening. But then I let it go. But going back at this report and looking at Corey Ellison and going, you couldn't go through all. You know how many documents there were
Yeah.
and how convoluted things were. You couldn't go through it all and absorb it all. And I missed that sort of going through it the first time for the book. But in going back on this Ellison story, now we've come across it again.
Yeah.
Ryan Potter and Chad Jones are looking at it. They picked up stuff on it. And there's got to be someone out there who knows the real story.
Well, it just it always begged for an explanation because the theory that, oh yeah, they're on a phone call and it's not even yet their anniversary, and there's this offhand comment of, from the female friend in Maine, and that set off a murder spree like this. It just never really made sense, right? It still doesn't. So
Well, it sounds like a scenario written on the back of a cigarette package in the middle of the night.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
okay, well, yeah, exactly. Like, what could have done this, and well,
Dude, we're going to tell this story, and this happened, and he left through the blueberry field, and then he did this, then he shot up the Onslow Belmont Fire Hall, and then Heidi Stevenson rammed him and took him off the playing field, and after she got in a gunfight with him, and then two heroic guys saw him at the Enfield gas station. They recognized him, and the heroic policeman engaged him and shot him. The only thing that's true is 22 people were dead.
yeah.
All the rest of the stuff isn't true.
Well, Paul, if there's two, there might be two more. That might not
Yeah,
even be
that's
true.
right. There might be two
At
more that
least
nobody's talking
22.
about. Now we got to find out who those two, who that blood belonged to.
Well, all the more reason when, interviews with people like Peter Griffin and people that would have been in that world, or RCMP handlers there, yeah, you can imagine who might know those things.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like just when you think I'm near the end, it pulls us back in.
Michael Corleone. I love it. I love it.
Hey, and I forgot to introduce myself to say, hey, who killed Corey Ellison?
Yeah.
We're gonna find out.
Palango. Don Palango.
There we go.
We'll see you. Well, I don't know if we'll see you next week, Paul, but we'll see you very soon. We'll put out some show notes if we're not sure if we're gonna be around next weekend. It's the late July, middle of the summer. We may take a brief hiatus, but we'll see. We'll see if we can schedule something, and if so, and if we can, it'll either be you and I, or else we're looking at a few other guests too. So
Yep.
there's lots to discuss. So
See
all
you
right. So
later. Have a
you-
good week.
yeah, you too. Have a great week, and everybody else out there too. And if you hear anything, let us know. And otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you. Good night.